Vraja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Prabhupada 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 Srila Prabhupada Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Gaur Premanandi, Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Stutara Sata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the Lotus feet of Shri Shri Guru Shri Gauranga. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. Welcome everyone to this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utyama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. Hare Krishna. Happy to see everyone here, and I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to speak Srimad Bhagavatam in this illustrious assembly of Vaishnavas. Today we're going to be speaking from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 3. Text 13. This chapter is called Pure Devotional Service, the Change of Heart. Hopefully by hearing and reflecting on this chapter deeply, we'll also have a change of heart. So this is Shonaka Rishi speaking. Shonaka Uvacha Itya Bhivyahritam Raja Nishamya Bharatarshavaha Kimanyat Prishtavan Bhuyo Vaya Sakim Rishim Kavim Shonaka uvacha ityabhivyarhitam raja nishamya bharatarshabha kimanyat prishtavan bhuyo vaya sakim rishim kavim. Devotees? Vaishnavis. Okay, word for word. Shonaka uvacha. Shonaka said, Iti, thus, abhivyahritam, all that was spoken. Raja, the king. Nishamya, by hearing. Bharata Rishabha, Maharaj Parikshit. Kim, what? Anyat, more. Prishtavan, did he inquire from him? Bhuyaha, again. Vyasakim, unto the son of Vyasadeva. Rishim, one who is well versed. Kavim, poetic. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Shonaka said, the son of Vyasadeva, Srila Shukadeva Goswami, was a highly learned sage and was able to describe things in a poetic manner. What did Maharaj Parikshit again inquire from him after hearing all that he had said? Please repeat. Shonaka said, the son of Vyasadeva, Srila Shukadeva Goswami, was a highly learned sage and was able to describe things in a poetic manner. What did Maharaj Parikshit again inquire from him after hearing all that he had said? Report. A pure devotee of the Lord automatically develops all godly qualities, and some of the prominent features of those qualities are as follows. He is kind, peaceful, truthful, equable, faultless, magnanimous, mild, clean, non-possessive, a well-wisher to all, satisfied, surrendered to Krishna, without hankering, simple, fixed, self-controlled, a balanced eater, sane, mannerly, prideless, grave, sympathetic, friendly, poetic, expert, and silent. Out of these 26 prominent features of a devotee, as described by Krishnadas Kaviraj in his Chaitanya Charitamrita, the qualification of being poetic is especially mentioned herein in relation to Shukadev Goswami. The presentation of Srimad Bhagavatam by his recitation is the highest poetic contribution. He was a self-realized learned sage. In other words, he was a poet amongst the sages. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militan Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vatsadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai. So in this verse we have a glorification of Shukadev Goswami by Shonika Rishi, who is representing the feelings of all the sages of Naimisharanya. And the recitation of the Bhagavatam has really just started. Maharaj Parikshit posed his initial questions, and Shukadev Goswami very concisely and poetically and eloquently answered those questions. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that eloquence means essential truth spoken concisely. So we can see in those initial responses by Shukadev Goswami that he's just cutting, he's just like really just putting it all point blank before Maharaj Parikshit. This is the situation of the material world, and this is what you have to do to get out of it, to perfect your life at the time of death. So, and he uses very poetic language to do that. And he starts off saying, Shrotavyadini Rajendra, Nrinam, help me, Nrinam Santi Sahasrashaha, Apashyatam Atmatattvam, Griheshu Griha Medinam. So he starts that line, Griheshu Griha Medinam. It's very poetic. One, because there's the repetition of Griheshu Griha Medinam. And also the word Griha Medi itself is a poetic word, because Medhi is the Sanskrit word means the pole that you tie oxen to when they're grinding grains. They walk around that pole. So that's the medhi. So griha medhi means that the griha is the central point of focus. It's the pivot of your life, basically. It's that thing which everything in your life revolves around. So he's saying that don't be like that, because Maharaj Krisha asked him, he says, what is the way of success for all human beings? How can all human beings perfect their lives? And specifically those at the time of death. And then he says, and what should one hear about and remember? And also tell me, what should one not do? So Shukadeva Goswami, he starts off by saying what one should not do. Don't be a griha medhi. Don't make your household and your family and your career, don't make that the center of your life. You have to do things, but just minimally, engage with this world minimally. And make Krishna the center of your life. Make Krishna the center of your griha. Make it a grihastha ashram. And then the second verse is also, the verse after that is also very poetic. How does it go? I should have made a note. He's blanking out on it. About the fallible, Kalatradishu, about the fallible soldiers. Say it, Ruth. Pashyam apina pashyati. Yeah, so he says that our family members, we're thinking, so the griha medhis, they're thinking that in this battle of life, because the material existence is like a struggle for existence. So in this battle of life, who are the soldiers? First of all, I'm the king. The griha medhi is thinking, in the battle here, I'm the king and I have all my soldiers. I have my army here who are fighting on my behalf, who are going to help me solve the problems of material existence. And who are those soldiers? Deha, Patra, Kaladra, Adi, etc. So my body, my wife or husband, and my other family members, etc. So basically my relations and society. These are my soldiers. But then he says that these are fallible soldiers. So don't put your faith in these soldiers, because they're not going to bring you ultimate happiness, and also they're also going to die. They're fallible. Just like many soldiers die on the battlefield, all these soldiers are also going to die, and you're going to be left. Then he says, not seeing this, he says this, I really like the last line of that verse, Pashyan api na pashyati. It's so poetic. It literally means, although seeing, they don't see. So you see that all around you, everybody is dying. That was Maharaj Yudhisthira's question, like, what is the most wonderful thing? The most wonderful thing is that although we see all around us that everybody's dying, we think that I'm not going to die. We think that our loved ones aren't going to die. We think that all those people, it happens to everybody else, but it's not going to happen to me. So Pashyan, we see it, but api na pashyati, we don't see it because we don't live in such a way. We don't live with that knowledge. We don't live with that in the back of our mind thinking, yeah, I could die any moment. My family members, my friends, everybody that I love is going to die and could die at any moment. And therefore I need to really think about, what is the value of my life? What's really important? What are my priorities? So he starts off with that very cutting language, but very poetic and very inspiring. And then he concludes that you should hear about shotavyas kirtitavyas cha smartavya Bhagavan Ishvaro Harihi. He says that, and he uses that also repetition, with the same endings on the words. It's very poetic. That you should constantly hear about and chant about and remember who? Bhagavan Ishvaro Harihi, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the Supreme Controller, whose name is Hari, or Krishna. So he just gives the whole philosophy of Krishna consciousness, the whole situation of this material world, our relationship with this material world, our relationship with Krishna, the process to attain Krishna, the perfection of life. He basically gives the whole Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana right there in just 5 or 6 verses. And so poetically, with, similes and metaphors and repetitions and alliterations, all the poetic devices. So now Shonaka Rishi, he's saying, wow, that was so poetic. That was so beautiful. That was so inspiring. I want to hear more. Tell me more. What else did Maharaj Parikshit ask? What else did Shukadeva Goswami say in reply? So he has this eagerness. So in this verse, in today's verse, there are two things that are emphasized as the qualities of devotees like Shukadeva Goswami, and these are the 26. He's talking about 26 qualities of any devotee, so not just Shukadeva Goswami, but any devotee, including ourselves. So the two qualities that are brought out in this verse are Rishi and Kavi. So Rishi means learned. And learned doesn't mean mundane knowledge that you have, a master's degree or a PhD or, 5 postdocs or whatever, but it means knowledge of Atma Tattva, the science of the self, the transcendental truth about who we are and what our relationship is with Krishna. And so a devotee is also called, the knowledge of Atma Tattva culminates in the conclusions of the Vedas, or Vedasar. Vedasar literally means Krishna. It's a name for Krishna, that he is the essence of the Vedas. Vedaischa sarver aham eva vedya. That Krishna says that by all the Vedas I am to be known. And of course, Srimad Bhagavatam is also the essence of the Vedas that we hear about in the very beginning in the glorifications of Srimad Bhagavatam. Nigama kalpa taror galitam palam. That's also very poetic language because it's using a metaphor. Nigama kalpa taror. So Nigama means the Vedas, and then kalpa taru means the desire tree. Like we say, vancha kalpa tarubhyascha. So kalpa taru means desire tree. So the Vedic literatures are like a tree that can fulfill all desires of the living entities, all desires of human beings who study them. And the Srimad Bhagavatam is of that tree, the galitam palam. It's the ripened fruit. Pal means fruit, and galitam means ripened. So Srimad Bhagavatam is the ripened fruit of the tree. The true value of a tree is in its fruits. You can plant a tree and you wait for it to grow, and sometimes you might wait 30 or 40 years for a tree to grow and produce fruits, but you're just waiting. And until the fruits come, the tree's just kind of there, and maybe you can, maybe it looks nice and it provides shade and it provides habitat for birds, but for the human being, what are we waiting for? The fruit. And when the first fruits come, then it's like, oh, the fruits are coming. Like here in Mayapur, we have so many mango trees. So you see that tree all year long and you're thinking, oh, mango tree, when are the mangoes coming, right? And then springtime, the flowers coming, oh, the flowers are coming, soon the mangoes are going to come. And then you see these little green things and you're like, the mangoes are coming, right? But they're not ripe, so you just have to wait. Because if you pick it when it's green, it's just hard, and maybe you can make a chutney or something, but it's not the same. So you're just waiting and waiting, and finally the ripened fruit, the sweet fruit, and it's like, mango season. So Srimad Bhagavatam is like, mango season of the tree of the Vedic literatures. It's something to get excited about, that this is the fruit. This is what we've been waiting for. This is the culmination of all knowledge, all material and spiritual knowledge of the Vedas, that it's all just condensed down into this. It's like you have the milk, or now it's like date gur season in Mayapur. So the trees are there and the sap's dripping, but that sap is like water, but they boil it down until it's solid, and then it's like date gur, you bite into that thing, it's like whoosh, So Srimad Bhagavatam is like that. It's just all the knowledge condensed into, this, it's just like bhakti, Sandrananda Visheshatma. It's inconceivably condensed bliss that is presented to us in a book. And we just need to read that, and Krishna is present in the pages of the Bhagavatam. And if we read it with the right mood and with the right intention, prayerfully taking shelter of Guru and Krishna, then, sadyo ridhyavarudyate, sadyo ridhyavarudyate, kritibish, shushushibish, tatshanat. That tatshanat, in that very moment, immediately, the Supreme Lord becomes established within one's heart. The Lord becomes present in the pages of the Bhagavatam and becomes active in one's life when we receive the Bhagavatam. So these are some glories of the Bhagavatam. And but being learned, so we should study the Bhagavatam, really like systematically study the Srimad Bhagavatam. Myself personally, I've really like taken a lot of shelter of the Bhagavatam through my whole life. And I just recently finished the Bhaktivedanta course with the IHE. And it was like just reading the Bhagavatam systematically every day, like solid with devotees who relish the Bhagavatam, and hearing from teachers who realize the Bhagavatam. It was so transformative. I really like I can't even, words don't describe the way that changed my life. You know, going through the whole thing, Bhakti Vaibhava, Bhakti Vedanta, and then just finishing the Bhagavatam and sort of reflecting on my personal spiritual path, you know, over those, let's say, how much, maybe 5-6 years of really dedicated study of the Bhagavatam. It's like I'm a different person. It's really like, you know, what Narada Muni says, Tadvag Viksargo Janataga Viplavo. It really causes a revolution in the lives of anybody who hears it, even sinful people. Janataga, even Jana, people who are full of aga, sin, like agasura. You may be agasura, but if you hear the Bhagavatam and you apply yourself, then it's going to change you. It's going to cause a revolution in your consciousness. So I feel that. I personally experienced that, so I can say that with conviction, with personal realization. The Bhagavatam is so powerful. Because Shukadeva Goswami, the reciter of the Bhagavatam, has these qualities, that he's Rishi, he knows what he's talking about. And so not only should we know what we're talking about, but we should know how to communicate that. Because there are many people who have a lot of knowledge, but they can't really convey it in a way that touches the heart. You know, like, have you ever had a teacher in school or in university that, like, you know they knew their stuff. They had so many degrees or, you know, PhD in the subject, and they're just like, their head is full of knowledge, but when they speak, it's just like, what? You know, like, it's so frustrating, right? Because you know he's got the knowledge. You know that person, you know, has knowledge, but somehow it's just going over your head, or it's just, you know, they're just droning on about something, and they can't make it relevant to the audience. They can't make it relatable. So that's also part of being a rishi or a kavi, is knowing the art of presenting it, and also having the will to present it, because a lot of devotees have knowledge. They study, but they don't teach. So we have to study and teach. And that's the parampara system, is receive and give it. Just the very word parampara is like parampara. It's like you give it, and it's like you take it in and you give it out to others, para. And if we don't do that, actually, Srimad Bhagavatam says that if we don't teach what we've learned, if we don't share the transcendental knowledge that we've received, then we're going to lose it. So it's actually very risky to not preach or to not teach or to not share our knowledge. They say that a Brahmin who has knowledge, who's very learned but doesn't give to others, then their knowledge actually diminishes day by day, just like water leaking out of a cracked pot. So it's very serious. And of course, Lord Chaitanya's mood is to give. You know, this is Odarya Dham. The word Odarya means giving. It means generosity. And Lord Chaitanya's mood is distribute. You know, breaking open the storehouse of love of God and just distributing the contents freely to everybody and anybody without considering who's qualified and who's not qualified. And of course, Lord Chaitanya gave us the order, the direct instruction, that Yare Deka Tare Kaha Krishna Upadesh. Amara Agyai Guru Hoy Tare Desh. That whoever you see, whoever you meet, wherever you go, just teach them about Krishna. Just share this knowledge of Krishna. Give them the holy name. Give them knowledge of Krishna. Teach them Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. And in that way become a guru. He said, on my order, all of you, he was telling all of his followers and all of us, readers of Chaitanya Charitamrita, both in the past, present, and future, Amara Agyaya Guru, all of you become guru and teacher, become teachers of this knowledge, and in that way liberate the land. So we should teach, and also we should try to become learned study the scriptures, hear attentively, take it to heart, think deeply about it. And also when we present the scriptures, try to do so poetically, in an attractive way. Because it's also an offering. Just like when you cook for Krishna, you can cook something really tasty, but it's not just about the taste, it's also the presentation, right? Because you don't want to just make everything that's all, yellow, for example. Like a yellow sabji and a yellow dal and a yellow rice and a yellow whatever, and then put it on the plate, and it's kind of, unless it's Vasant Panchami or something, it's kind of like, whoa, okay, today's yellow day. It's not so appetizing. But if you have like different colors, then it's like, oh, wow, that's very attractive. And then it's described how when Srimati Radharani and the gopis go over to Mother Yashoda's house in Nandagram and they cook for Krishna, they cook so many different preparations, all different, shapes of things and textures, and some dry and some wet, and, some savories are round and some are like, long, and they're all different, there's variety. There's different colors. And then even when they arrange it on the plate, it's described how they arrange it like in like concentric circular designs, and they put a lot of thought into the presentation. So when we present the knowledge, we shouldn't just splat on the plate. We shouldn't just like download it, but we should try to make it attractive, try to make it beautiful, poetic. And that's what Shukadeva Goswami has done. He's made the Bhagavatam so poetic. And Srila Prabhupada also in his purports, even though the purports are like prose, they're like poetry in prose form. Because he also, even in his purports, he uses so many analogies, right, which are basically metaphors or similes, comparing this to that. Why? So we can have a connotation, make a connection, get a visual image of what's going on, and that's poetry. So devotees do this for the pleasure of the Lord. And I was thinking particularly of one verse from the Bhagavatam, just as an example of Shukadeva Goswami's poetry. One verse that I like from the 10th canto, you may know this verse, it's a well-known verse. It goes, it's 10, 14, 58. Samashritaye, you can join me if you know it. Samashritaye padapallavam plavam mahad padam punya yasho murari bhavam budir vatsa padam 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 yatvi padam natesham. So you can just hear it, right, when we say it. It's so poetic. It's like the repetition of that word. It's like it catches you. It catches your mind like, what? It pulls you in like a hook. So that's the one purpose of poetry. And then also there's in a poetic device called alliteration, which means repetition of the first letter of the word. So he says, padapallavam plavam. And not only the first letter, but even the consonants within it. It's like pallavam plavam. It's like the P's and the L's and the A's and the V's. It's just like different combinations of the same letters. It's such beautiful poetry, right? And not only that, but the meaning of those words, because pada means the Lord's feet, and then pada pallava means a flower bud, and then plava means a boat. So it's all just metaphorical. That Krishna's feet, they're like pallava, they're like a flower bud. That a flower bud is tender and soft, and it has this connotation of newness and freshness, because Krishna's Navayovanam, because everything Krishna says is ever fresh. And also because, like, let's say you have like something like a pink carnation or a pink rose. You see on the outside the green leaves of the bud, but then inside you see a little bit of pink, like it's starting to show. The pink petals are starting to reveal themselves. So Krishna's lotus feet are also pinkish on the bottom and, bluish sham on the top. So you see this like pinkish little fringe, like in a pink flower bud that's about to bloom. And then those pinkish, soft, beautiful, fresh, tender lotus feet are like plavam. They're a boat. Imagine a boat. It's not like an iron boat or even a wooden boat, but it's this flower bud boat. This beautiful, soft, fragrant flower bud boat that you just get on, and then you just sail across the ocean of material existence on this beautiful flower boat of Krishna's lotus feet. Like, what a great journey, like all aboard, let's get on. And then it says that this Bhavambudir, the material ocean, So the journey across this material ocean is not even very difficult when you take shelter of Krishna's lotus feet. But the ocean is endless. You can't see the end of it. But if you actually take shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, if you get on this boat, then that ocean shrinks to the size of what? Vatsapadam, a calf's footprint. The calf's footprint. And then after crossing that Vatsapadam, you come to the Parampadam, the supreme abode of the Lord. And then you never have to come again to this place where there's Padam Padam Yad Vipadam. That at every step, Padam Padam, every step there is what? Vipadam. Vipadam means calamities, like Queen Kunti prays, Vipadam Santinatasya. It's that let these calamities come again and again. It's the same word, Vipadam. So in this world, it's Padam Padam Yad Vipadam. Every step there's some calamity. But not tesham, not for those who what? Who have samashritaye padapallavam plavam, who have taken shelter of, who've gotten on this boat, this beautiful, fragrant, soft, pinkish lotus feet of Krishna. So it's just so beautiful, Shukadeva Goswami's language, and there's just countless. I'm sure all of you have like your favorite verses from the Bhagavatam. They're just like so poetic that you just want to like sit back and like relish, and just like get a vision, just get a visual picture of, and get a sensory experience of the sight and the smell and the touch and the, like poetry. It just invites you to have an experience using all of your senses. So Krishna, he's praised as Uttama Shloka. That's one of his names. That he's that person who is praised with transcendental poetry. And actually, Lord Chaitanya says in Chaitanya Charitamrita that without poetry, the Lord cannot be described. It's just impossible to describe Krishna without poetry. And it's even impossible to describe the mellows of devotional service without using poetry. Why? Because it's so beyond words. Even the Vedas say that the absolute truth, the Lord, cannot be described in words. And in the 11th canto, the Nava-yogendras, they address this point, because it's a little bit of a contradictory point, that how is it that the Lord can't be described in words, and still Krishna says Vedaischa sarveraham eva vedya, that by the Vedas I am to be known. So on one hand, the Taittiriya Upanishad saying the Lord can't be known by words, and then Krishna saying I can be known by the words of the Vedas. So then this is addressed in the 11th canto. The Nava-yogendras say, this is 11.336. Neither the mind nor the faculties of speech, sight, intelligence, the life air, or any of the senses are capable of penetrating that supreme truth, any more than small sparks can affect the original fire from which they are generated. Not even the authoritative language of the Vedas can perfectly describe the supreme truth, since the Vedas themselves disclaim the possibility that the truth can be expressed by words. So they recognize that. But through indirect reference, the Vedic sound does serve as evidence of the supreme truth, since without the existence of that supreme truth, the various restrictions found in the Vedas would have no ultimate purpose. So he's saying that, the Vedas, the words, the literal words of the Vedas can't directly describe the Lord, because the Lord is beyond words. But the words of the Vedas can give some indirect reference, some indirect description or indirect understanding. Like indirectly they can indicate the Lord. So they can't directly describe the Lord, but directly they can indicate the Lord. And in the purport of this verse, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives the example of how Krishna is blue. So we all know that Krishna is blue, but then he says that, and even when you say, when you tell somebody Krishna is blue, it's kind of like, it just kind of falls flat, right? The statement that Krishna is blue, it's like, it's like, it just doesn't do it, saying that Krishna is blue. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he addresses that. He's like, yeah, Krishna is blue, but he's not the blue. He's not any blue. The word blue doesn't really say what Krishna is. Because Krishna's his body is transcendental, it's totally spiritual. It's not blue, the color blue like we have here in the material world. Like if you go down to the paint store and you want to paint your house, your walls in your room blue, and then they have this whole palette, right, of all the different shades of blue. Like maybe there's 25 different shades of blue, and they each have a little name under them, and then you tell them, I want this exact shade of blue. But none of those shades of blue are Krishna. And even if you you look at the specific hues, you're not going to be able to indicate the color of Krishna. And so whenever Krishna is described, whenever the blue complexion of Krishna is described, it's always done with poetry. It has to be done with poetry. You can't talk about what Krishna looks like without poetry. That's what the Yogendras are saying. And so it's always like with Krishna, it's that, Krishna's blue like a monsoon cloud that's illuminated by lightning. Or Krishna's blue like the petals of a fully bloomed dark blue lotus flower. Or Krishna's blue like an exquisite sapphire in the midst of golden ornaments when he's surrounded by the gopis. So what poetry does is it takes blue, which is just kind of a word which with a vague conception of a color, and it gives you an experience. It fills it up with connotations which take your mind to which conveys more than words. It just conveys more than the word blue could convey. Because when you say that like a monsoon cloud illuminated by lightning, so then you see the cloud and you see this darkish, the sham, like dark blue, almost blackish, grayish blue, but it's not even the color either. It's the whole experience of seeing a monsoon cloud, especially illuminated by lightning. And when a storm's coming, so Mayapur, like after the hot summer, and that rainy season is coming, and the first time, you're like sitting there and it's so hot and you're soaked in sweat, and it's like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and then the air starts swirling, and you look in the sky and you see the black, this black sky, and then you hear ba-boom, and it's just like, it's a feeling, it's like, yes, it's like the rain is coming, it's an experience. It's like you just like your life comes back to you. and Prabhupada talks about this in his purport to Light of the Bhagavat, how when the rainy season comes, the farmers, they become enlivened, but the industrialists, they become despondent, like, oh no, because they like exploiting the workers, but now the workers are going to be able to produce their own goods, and they don't need to work in factories anymore because they've like got production going on. So in the same way, Krishna, he's like that lotus, he's like the monsoon cloud that inspires the devotees. When you see that blue of the monsoon cloud, you get inspired, you get enlivened. It's like your life is parched in the desert of material existence, but the rain is going to come, like the shower of mercy is going to fall on your head, and it's going to bring you back to life. And then in the same way, the demons, when they see Krishna, they run away. Just like those industrialists, when they see the cloud, like, oh no, now the rain's going to come. Now they're going to be successful without me. So like that. So it's this whole experience. You see all these feelings, all these associations and connections to your life and to other things just by saying that Krishna is like a monsoon cloud. And the same thing with like the petals of a lotus. Like the lotus petals are so soft. You want to take that lotus petal and just like rub it on your cheek. It's just so delicate. And the blue lotus is like a rare lotus. Whoever even saw a blue lotus, speak of a dark blue lotus. I've never seen one. So it's like something rare, something that's almost like, like a unicorn or something that, does it even exist? Something so exquisite. So like Krishna's that rare personality that's just so sought after, like a rare treasure, like a gem. And then sapphire too, like gems, they have their own brilliance. It's not just blue, but it's like it's luminous. We hear about how the subterranean heavenly planets are illuminated by the jewels on the heads of the serpents. So like Krishna, he's like illuminating. His blue, it's these dark blue, but we don't usually think of a dark color as bright, but Krishna's dark, blue, shyam, like bluish black, but at the same time he's bright, he's luminous. Like his darkness illuminates the whole room. So that when he goes to steal butter, he doesn't need a light. He goes in the dark, and the whole room is lit up by his effulgence. Like that. So with poetry, we can actually get an understanding. We can get a feeling. We can get an actual sense of Krishna. And not only that, but it creates, it attracts, it's attractive, all these poetic, because you want to know more. You want to know more about Krishna. Oh yeah, his color's like that. What else about him? What else about his qualities? And what does he do? And it creates this inquisitiveness, which is exactly what we're seeing in the verse. That the sages of Naimisharanya are like, and what else did he say? What else is there about Krishna? What else? What more did Maharaj Parikshit ask? And how else did Shukadeva Goswami answer? And it also creates an eagerness to follow the process of bhakti, by which we can know Krishna, by which Krishna will reveal himself. Because we can only really know Krishna, we can only really even access these poetic descriptions by the mercy of the Lord. And so, because Atah Shri Krishna Namadi, Nabhavet Grayam Indriyai, but then, Sevan Mukehi Jivado, Swayameva Sparatya Yada. That by service, by chanting, specifically by chanting the holy names of the Lord and taking prasadam, then Krishna will reveal himself through these descriptions. So poetry, it pulls us in. And actually, let's see, running out of time. But I wanted to tell a little story from the Chaitanya Charitamrita that although devotees are poetic and should write poetry, but we have to be careful not to take poetic license too far, because poetry is kind of like a medium of communication whereby there's license, it's open, to express. It's something that kind of gushes forth from the heart, right? It's sort of like you're expressing your deeper thoughts and feelings through poetry, and you want to convey deeper meanings like that, but those need to be in accordance with Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. So even in our own poetry, if we should definitely write poetry. Prabhupada wanted us to write our realizations, and his spiritual master, also, Prabhupada himself, wrote poetry, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur loved Prabhupada's poetry. Adore ye this fine day, sweeter than heaven, blessed than May. Like, he loved that poem, and on the basis of that poem, he said, publish anything that he writes. So Prabhupada was very encouraged, and he went on to write poetry. He wrote, the poems on the Jaladuta. He wrote Vrindavan Bhajan while he was in Vrindavan preparing for his great mission. He wrote Gitargan, the Bengali rendition, poetic rendition of the Bhagavad Gita. And he also he told Allen Ginsberg, who was a poet, that he should write poetry about Krishna. So he wanted us to write our realizations and to express them also poetically. But they need to be in accordance with Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. So there was this, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, the story is told about this Bengali Brahmin Vaishnava who wrote poetry glorifying Lord Chaitanya. And he wrote like a drama, poetic drama. And he brought it to Lord Chaitanya. He wanted Lord Chaitanya to hear it. But the devotees Lord Chaitanya's associates were very protective of Lord Chaitanya, because this was during the Antya Lila when he was very internal, and they didn't want, he was very easily set off into, moods. So they were, and Lord Chaitanya was cultivating a particular flavor of mood in his relation, in his ecstasies. So they were very careful which verses would be spoken to Lord Chaitanya, because that would affect his mind, and that would, affect the direction in which his ecstasies would develop. And so no one would be able to present anything to Lord Chaitanya without it being screened by Swarup Damodar especially. So this Bengali poet, he came with this poetry, and the other devotees liked it, and they thought, okay, let's see what Swarup Damodar thinks. So then Swarup Damodar heard it, and he was just like, nope. This did not get the green light. He said, actually, this is very offensive. I'll read the line here. It's actually, let's see. You can also think about how this is or is not appropriate poetry. I'll just read the English. This is Chaitanya Charitamrita, Antya Lila, Chapter 5, Text 112. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has assumed a golden complexion and has become the soul of the body named Lord Jagannath, whose blooming lotus eyes are widely expanded. Thus he has appeared in Jagannath Puri and brought dull matter to life. May that Lord, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Dev, bestow all good fortune upon you. So you can see how this Bengali poet, he's a Vaishnava, he's a devotee of Lord Chaitanya, and he's really trying to glorify Lord Chaitanya. He has the best of intentions, and he wants to bring out how, Lord Chaitanya, he's like the life of Jagannath, that he's, brought dull matter to life. But when Swarab Damodar heard it, he was like, this is so just bogus, this is so wrong, because you're saying that Jagannath, he said, one, it's offensive to Lord Jagannath, because you're saying that Jagannath is basically like a dull material body, which has a soul in it, and that soul is Lord Chaitanya. And then you're also offending Lord Chaitanya, because you're saying that he's like a soul within a material body. Lord Chaitanya is not a spiritual spark like a jiva in a material body the way we are. His body is non-different from himself, and he's, the unlimited Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's not inside a material form. So you've offended both of the lords. And he's just like, oh no. But then, so he was actually very heavy. He was actually really condemning this explanation of the verse. But then Swarab Damodar, he very graciously, and this is another quality of a Vaishnava, is to fan the spark. He saw that, okay, he totally got it wrong. He totally messed up this poetry. But he had a good intention. So then he took the same exact Sanskrit words that this poet had used, and he just tweaked the interpretation of them a little bit to give a totally different meaning. Sometimes Sanskrit verses, they can, even when the demons, they use Sanskrit verses to blaspheme the Lord. And then acharyas like Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, they'll say, actually Mother Saraswati appeared on the tongue of this demon to speak eloquent glorifications of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's what Swarab Damodar did. He took the words and he gave alternative meanings, and he said, present it like this. This is the actual meaning. Actually, Mother Saraswati appeared on your tongue and induced you to recite this verse, but this is the meaning she intended, not the one that you've given. And then after that, the poet, he just paid his dandavats at the feet of Swarab Damodar and begged forgiveness, and was so grateful for the interpretation that he had learned, for the preaching that Lord Chaitanya had given him. So there's so many poets. So many of our acharyas are poets. The poetry of Rupa Goswami is just incredible. Sanatan Goswami, and then we have, of course, Krishnadas Kaviraj. Kaviraj literally means the king of poets. And recently I was on Vaisheshivara's Yatra, or we're still on Vaisheshivara's Yatra. Now we've just come to Mayapur, but we were last 5 days in Jagannath Puri. And we were reciting this one, a beautiful verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita. This is Adi Lila 2.2. I'll just read the Sanskrit's also beautiful, but I'll just read the English in interest of time. O my merciful Lord Chaitanya, may the nectarian Ganges water of your transcendental activities flow on the surface of my desert-like tongue. Beautifying these waters are the lotus flowers of singing, dancing, and loud chanting of Krishna's holy name. So you get it? There's the Ganges water is the transcendental activities of the Lord, and they're flowing over the person's tongue. He's a desert. So the tongue is a desert, and this river is flowing, which is the activities of the Lord, the narrations of Krishna's pastimes. And the waters are beautified by lotus flowers. What are those lotus flowers? The singing, the dancing, and the loud chanting of Krishna's holy name. So those are the lotus flowers on the river of the narrations of Krishna's transcendental activities. And those are the pleasure abodes of the unalloyed devotees. So the devotees live in that river. And the devotees are compared to swans, ducks, and bees. So the devotees are like swans, ducks, and bees, just playing, just floating and swimming and playing on that river of Krishna's pastimes, which is decorated with the lotus flowers of the singing, dancing, and loud chanting of Krishna's names. And it says the river's flowing produces a melodious sound that gladdens their ears. So it's just very beautiful. It's like the image, and there's so many verses, countless verses like that. And then there's one specific section of the Bhagavatam that's just so poetic, and the acharyas comment on the poetry, and that's chapter 31 of the 10th canto, which is the Gopi Gita. So all of those verses, I don't know if anyone, there's actually a purport that says this, that the first consonant of each line and then the first consonant of the word that's in the middle of each line is the same. And then the second syllable of of each line is also the same. So I'll recite this verse, and most of you know this verse, so you can say it with me. And then after we'll see, I'll point out how that is, because probably what I just said didn't quite register. Okay, so you can say with me. Tavakatam ritam tapta jivanam kavibiritam kalmasapaham shravana mangalam shrimadatatam bhuvigrinantiye bhuridajana. So get this. Well, first I'll read the translation. The nectar of your words and the descriptions of your activities are the life and soul of those suffering in this material world. These narrations, transmitted by learned sages, eradicate one's sinful reactions and bestow good fortune upon whoever hears them. These narrations are broadcast all over the world and are filled with spiritual power. Certainly, those who spread the message of Godhead are most munificent. So then, Tava Katamritam, so the T, and then Tapta Jivanam. And next line, Kavivir Iditam, Kalmasapaham, the K. And then Shravana Mangalam, such as Shra, Shrimadatatam, Bhuvigrinantiye, Bhuridajana. Every verse of this chapter is like that. And then there's the second syllable, Tava, Kavi, Shrava, Bhuvi. There's a V. Every single verse, it has that structure. It's just incredible, right? The poetry of Shukadeva Goswami. And because this is like the Gopi Gita, it's like so emotionally intense. It's like he packed the most beautiful poetry into the most intense emotional outpouring of the gopis for Krishna. So it's just beautiful. I don't know, it's just kind of overwhelming actually. So then we might think, well, if if devotees are supposed to be poetic, then how can I write beautiful poetry? So Lord Chaitanya addresses this question that by the empowerment of the Lord. One needs the empowerment of the Lord, and we become empowered by the Lord by having the right intention. So when we set out to write, we should not be thinking, oh, I'm going to, people are going to like this, they're going to recognize me as a great poet. But we should be have just the desire to please Krishna. Anya bilashita shunyam. That no other desire than to please Krishna, and to spiritually benefit those who hear our poetry, and also to purify ourselves. And then we can seek the blessings of devotees. That before we sit down to write, we can pray to Guru, to Krishna, just like Krishnadas Kaviraj did. He went to the Madan Mohan deity and he begged for the blessings to be able to compose Chaitanya Charitamrita. And then the garland of the Madan Mohan deity fell from the deity to the floor. The pujari picked it up and put it around the head, around the neck of Krishnadas Kaviraj. And then he understood that, okay, I have the blessings. And then he could write with confidence. But then you might think, well, I'm not a scholar, I'm not very learned, I'm not a poetic person. How can I write poetry? Just forget it. So how can I ever be a kavi? Because devotees are supposed to be a kavi. If I'm not a kavi, how can I be a good devotee? So then it doesn't matter, actually. Just speak about Krishna. So if you heard something nice in class, or just tell whoever you meet about it. Yare deka tarikaha Krishna upana. Just tell them whatever you heard, whatever you read. Or you went to see the deities this morning. Just talk about how, Krishna looks so beautiful. His turban was like this, and Gopi, the dots on his face were like this. Or, Radharani was holding this beautiful thing in her hand. Or whatever, just describe Krishna and tell about what you heard. And actually, when Krishna was arriving in Hastinapur, the ladies were on the rooftops of the houses, and they were looking at Krishna, and they were just like, oh my God, Krishna, he's so gorgeous, he's like this, and just look at his curly hair, and just look at the way he's playing his flute, and just look at this threefold bending form, and do you remember when he did this? And oh yeah, do you remember when he said that? Oh, he's just so sweet, he's so loving with his devotee, he's so affectionate. They're just talking like that, and Krishna was hearing it. And the verse there says in Srimad Bhagavatam 1:10-20, it says that those talks by the women on the rooftops of Hastinapur are more pleasing to Krishna than the Vedic hymns. So just talking about Krishna with your friends amongst devotees, just like, Krishna's so cool, like that's more pleasing than the Vedic hymns. So anybody can do that, and so we should do that, and also, devotee's life, even a devotee's life is like living poetry, because like we were talking about how poetry gives indirect reference and it has like layers of meaning. So in a devotee's life, we don't just see the world like point blank, like just face value. But when you see the sun, you don't just see the sun like, oh, there's this thing in the sky. You see like, this is the eye of Krishna. This is Krishna's mercy. This is like, Krishna's illuminating the world so that we can, and we pray, oh, please illuminate my heart and soul so that I can know you, so that I can come closer to you. And just everything that a devotee sees, we see between the lines. It's like reading between the lines. We see more than what is face value. We see Krishna behind everything. We see Krishna's hand in everything that happens in our lives. And so it's like a devotee's life. We're just living poetry. Everything is just like a living metaphor that indicates Krishna indirectly. And so we can also convey that in poetry. Just talk about our experience, talk about our realizations of Krishna and all the arrangements that he makes in our lives. And even if our poetry is not perfect, hold on, somebody's telling me that class is over. Even if our poetry is not perfect, but Narada Muni says, tadvag visargo janataga viplavo yasmin pratishlokam abaddavatyapi. So abad avatyapi means that even if it's imperfectly composed, still it will be accepted by sincere people. So just try to speak from the heart. Try to speak your realization, speak from the heart to sincere souls, and that will cause a revolution. Tadvag visargo janataga viplavo. That will cause the viplavo. That will cause the revolution. That will cause people's heads to spin. Literally. And Lord Chaitanya, Ramananda Roy, he quotes this verse by Rupa Goswami. Rupa Goswami writes this amazing verse that says, what is the use of a bowman's arrow or a poet's poetry if they penetrate the heart but do not cause the heart to spin? So this viplavo literally means revolution. So a revolution means, like a big transformation, but it also means to spin, like the planets revolving around the sun or whatever. So it causes a revolution in our lives, and it also causes our heads to spin. That poetry. So when we read the Srimad Bhagavatam, that causes our heads to spin. And when we speak, even if our words are imperfectly composed, even if our poetry is just bad, by mundane calculation, it's just bad poetry. Still, if it's spoken with sincerity, if it's spoken like according to Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, it's going to have impact. It's going to cause the heart to spin. So we should not be shy. We should express ourselves. Every devotee has the duty actually to express what we know, what we've learned, what we've heard about Krishna, and keep the parampara alive, to become Guru, to liberate the land. And we can also distribute other people's poetry, right? Like we can distribute Srimad Bhagavatam, we can distribute Bhagavad Gita. Those are all poetry. Prabhupada's purports are poetry. And they will cause people's heads to spin, and they will change the world. Jai. So I got a little overly enlivened by all this transcendental poetry. But I can take a couple of questions or comments if anybody has something.
Srimad, thank you so much, Mataji, for such a lively class. Sometimes we see those who are not devotees also, they have this poetic demeanor. So how to understand this? Like among 26 qualities, maybe none of them they are present, but still they are poetic. So can you speak something more?
you're saying, sorry, I didn't quite get your question. If devotees...
Non-devotees.
Oh, non-devotees. Yeah, non-devotees. So non-devotees may write poetry, but if it doesn't indicate Krishna, then basically what is the value, right? It's like so many zeros. Prabhupada would explain it like that. The devotees may have so many good qualities. They may have like many of the qualities of devotees, right? That's 26 qualities listed. But it's just like one zero and another zero and another zero. Like maybe they're very tolerant, so that's a nice zero. And then, maybe they're very austere, that's a nice zero. Maybe they can control their senses. Okay, great looking zero there. They write beautiful poetry is another beautiful zero, a very poetic, eloquent zero, but yeah, it's a zero. So they just need to put the one in front, and then all of those zeros have value. So Prabhupada wants us to speak to qualified, competent, intelligent, people and give them Krishna so that their lives could have value. Otherwise, it's just not impressive. All those zeros, they're still just zero. Okay, anything else? Okay, it's getting late. I don't want to keep you from breakfast and all your services, so thank you very much for your kind attention. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol.